Great. Well, thank you everybody for taking the time this afternoon to come into this session. I'm really sorry that we weren't, obviously this is a bit of a hybrid event. So this is a part AgTech meetup. So I'm here in Stone and Chalk, but unfortunately it's not possible for us to have anybody else here. So we're almost here on our lonesome. And it also links into a project that we've been working with both the Gaia team and the rest of the wine industry around mapping and creating an open mapping standards for our wine industry. So it's crossing both of these. It would have been brilliant if we could have got together in person, had a beer. So apologies that this is all virtual and we've moved it slightly forward. So hopefully that's helpful for everybody's diaries. So just for the people that are on the call that might not have followed all of our Collabriculture sessions, essentially Collabriculture is a project which has had support by PIRSA here in South Australia and the wine industry. And we've been working together really collaboratively over a series of workshops. And this is workshop number 4 and 6, just to identify as a group of people who are interested in mapping in vineyards, like what are the most important features of vineyards, and actually working towards publishing that really openly as a step towards building like open and interoperable maps for our industry, where everybody has basically a shared understanding and we start to work towards like really shared open data standards. So I think Lindsay is about to share a link to a PDF doc that we've put out today, which, you know, after those first workshops, we've had some really good input and feedback from the wine community about what mapping features of vineyards are most important to them. We've summarized that in an initial PDF doc and worked with everybody to try and define all of those most important attributes. So please take a look at that PDF doc. There's going to be a link at the end of this presentation for any feedback. So it's hello@collabriculture.com. So any feedback's really, really appreciated, but hopefully we're getting there. It feels like we're getting to a rough consensus around all of these kind of core areas. So this is a conceptual vine row model. So we're working to do this at the first step. And then in our last 2 workshops, we're going to work with everybody and get into actually the technical details of this and start to work towards actually publishing out a logical data model where we start to discuss and agree on data standards and get consensus around that as well. So it actually turns into something that we're able collectively to action. So just in terms of what came out as the most important features, essentially just on the left-hand side, you can see that core structure. So it was vineyards, and obviously, you know, vineyards is a property. So it has some relationship to kind of cadastral boundaries that contains vines and contains a collection of blocks. And then we've gone into more details about what the community has defined a block as. This was probably the hardest area to reach consensus around. That's basically, we've kind of landed on it being the management unit that we use as grape growers, and actually what we then interface with wineries around what gets contracted to, what we have to do our spray record reporting to, like what gets used when we have fruit booked by wineries. And again, we just wanted to one of the things that came out was highlighting that often blocks from a spatial perspective might contain multiple sort of parcels of grapes. So they might not be continuous areas that actually make up a block. And also we then broke into this concept, which is a bit more conceptual, about zones, and the fact that there are loads of reasons why on top of blocks, people within the industry create zones. Sometimes they're for management reasons, so it might reflect some kind of variability to do with soil or some other reason, and also it could reflect things like irrigation design. So there might be zones which are irrigation zones, but it's basically created a zone as a catch-all for all of these things which essentially sit above blocks, so they can bridge multiple blocks. And then we also looked at a different type of a zone, which is essentially a planting record. So that's the genetics of our vine. So what variety is planted, and at what actual date, what was the event when that vine was, or block, that area of vines were planted, and the clone information as well. So that's just an example actually of a block on our vineyard. So we have a block. So our block 1 Shiraz actually contains 2 different planting records, but it's on the same block as we have it, contract and managed. And then we've looked at vine rows so that they can be both linear and curvilinear, and that sometimes vine rows might, for some reason, have a break in there. So there might be some kind of headland that separates them. And then we've gone into more detail around vine rows and what makes up a vine row. So we've gone into more detail about the fact that vine rows, at least if we're looking, and we've taken this primarily from kind of a top-down vantage point, they contain individual vines, and those vines cover an area of the vine row, and those vine rows also contain like a canopy region, and they also have a undervine region, and the rows are separated by a certain row width, and then between those kind of canopy undervine regions there is the mid-row area as well. So yeah, we've kind of been doing this work. Please have a look at that PDF document. And then, as a part of these workshops that we were running, one of the key areas was that we would also bring people into the workshops that are doing really innovative things, like spatially and using maps and using imagery. And so we obviously had Emily in the first session talking about what she's done, like bringing the world of like how she maps streets and bringing that thinking into viticulture. And then we've had Shay and Hans just bringing in their insights from the mining industry. And again, we have a slightly different angle this workshop with Stu and Tim, and I'll bring Stu in first. And Stu's been like really leading the charge in terms of creating digital twins of vineyards. So I'm going to throw over to him and let him take the floor. And I think he's going to fly us around the vineyard in the Hunter Valley. As I said at the beginning, any questions you've got for Tim or for Stu, please post them in the chat function. We'll be looking out for them, but we're going to leave questions to the end. So we should have loads of time at the end. We're going to wrap this up within an hour. So any cues, please post them. And Stu, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ollie. Yeah, as Ollie mentioned, we're one of the founders for a company called Agronomy. We are very focused on that digital twin and digitizing the entire farming system. There's a lot of technology there, both focused on whether it be the crop or the vine. We're trying to take it one step wider and look at the entire system and look at some of the characteristics and the ways in which we can analyze that farming system to enable growers to make more informed decisions. So I'm going to share my screen now and take you to Tyrrell's Vineyard in the Hunter Valley at Pecolbin. So Ollie, can you just give me a thumbs up that you can see that model there? That's great. So yeah, as I said, it's about 600 hectares of area that the Tyrrells own and manage and have owned and managed for a number of generations. Like I said, this is not just the vines, this is the entire farming system. So you can see some of the dams, some of the area that isn't farmed at all. So a lot of opportunities there to sort of see the entire farming system. What I'll do is I'll sort of give you an overview. What we do is have taken a manned aircraft on over the top of this vineyard and created a high resolution 3D model of the farmland using photogrammetry. We are doing that at such high resolution because the way that we're approaching this is to digitize the farm once, create what we're calling a digital foundation, and then that then opens up a number of opportunities to not only improve the landscape by looking at the actual landscape, but also bringing in other technologies to create that more dynamic piece, create that digital twin. So I'll zoom in, and we deliver all this through a web-based platform. So that means that it's easily managed, easily shared. We're not sending really bulk data to the client. It's really focused on a usable tool that the grower or the owner or the manager or the vineyard owner can engage with. So As I zoom in, you'll start to see that this data is pretty clear. It's taken at about 3 centimeters in terms of its resolution. So really, really high res. And you can see really all the different vine rows. And then when I turn it into a 3D environment, it just creates a whole new perspective. So you have that 3D element there that is really critical to this. That's sort of fundamental to what we're trying to offer to the market. And I'll show you that reason in a second. But specifically looking at some of the work that Ollie's been driving around the classification of the entire vineyard and the block and the varieties and that type of thing. Just getting that storm come over the top, so it might go dark. But as I click on any of this area of the vineyard, I'm just going to move the zoom screen here. You can see that the block is NVC4. It was planted in 1980. The variety is Chardonnay, and you've got the vineyard, the NVC vineyard. So you can actually see that there's a great deal of detail. I'm just going to change tabs very quickly. And you can see that the boundaries for all those different blocks are created as well. So visually, can you hear me all right there, Ollie?
Yeah, no, that's great.
Starting to cats and dogs. So you can see all the blocks broken down, the area of each of those blocks, and then when I click on that block, you'll start to see that data coming up. So it's about creating that classification, that benchmark for the entire farming system, or in this case, the vineyard. So you can actually get a clear indication of where those block boundaries are, and then the information around each of them from their subnames. So their block name is SFW16, but how the vineyard owners or managers talk about them would be roadblock. So a number of different names and just managing those types of varieties and those names as well. So sort of some of that conceptual idea that you spoke about, Ollie.
How did you get, and just by the way, with this vineyard, how did you actually get the information through from Tyrrell's?
So they gave us a lot of PDFs, so hand-drawn PDFs that they'd had from their vineyards over time that weren't digitized. They had no reason to digitize those features. So we've taken those and actually created that digital account of it so that it can be used. It's practical. It's just a shapefile that can be shared and be used for a number of different causes throughout the life cycle of that vineyard or what they're trying to do in terms of management practices. That doesn't only lend itself to, again, the vines. We're trying to take it even a step sort of wider and look at the entire system. So I know that this building here, they haven't actually been labeled yet, but this building here, when I click on it, again, should tell me that it is a building, the area that's under building. And I know that this is the barrel shed, for example, right? So once this does get labeled as the barrel shed, that point in time that we know that building is the barrel shed. So if there are other technologies that can be integrated in terms of blockchain, for example, so knowing how many barrels of what variety are in that barrel shed, using this technology to clearly articulate that and dive further into the technology and into the mapping system to understand, how many barrels are in that shed, which barrels are due to go out, when are they due to go out, and then tracing that all the way back to the actual vineyard or the block from where that wine came from. So that's the thinking around the entire system. Again, all the dams have been identified in terms of sustainability. The sustainability manager for this vineyard actually had a lot of interest in what we're doing in this space for reporting to some of the bodies they have to report to. So this is a really great tool. And that first step is really critical in terms of that digitization to create that digital foundation. So then we can start to step forward in some of that technology. And I think that one of the things that we've been able to do through Collabriculture, and one of the main drivers and what we're seeing, is that shared digital language. So making sure that when we call it a block, it's a block that can be referred to throughout the lifespan of whether it's a planting or traceability, management decision, whatever it might be, that block remains that block for the entire life cycle of that use of technology.
When you've been classifying things there, Stu, like you classified that barrel shed building,
Yep.
Are you also classifying things like trees? So some of those kind of other aspects of a vineyard?
Yeah, so we do. We classify the entire area. So the entire farming system does get classified, whether it's, some vineyard owners have cattle grazing. So there's the grazing element, there's the dams, all the trees are classified. Even the solar panels in this instance are classified as well. So that's really critical to the entire farming system, having a really clear digital register of the entire system.
Yeah, nice.
What I mentioned before around that resolution of data, no one's really going to go and get a 3D map of their farm or vineyard done without a catalyst to do it. This looks pretty, but it has to be more than pretty. It has to be functional. And we have gone down a path with CSIRO, using some of the technology that they've previously used in other sectors and commercializing it within agriculture. So what I'm going to show you now is a water flow prediction model. So this shows you where the water moves across the entire vineyard. And this is really critical to why people would engage in this technology, is so it has use. So when I turn on this water layer, you can clearly see where the water moves. And that is a visual representation of some of those catchment areas. So where you see the areas that are red into yellow, into green, into blue, that indicates that there are higher flows of volume through that particular point in the vineyard. And where you see these blue patches is where you're likely to get pooling. So that's a really great way of saying, well, you know, obviously water is a critical resource across any farming system, and understanding the hydrological profile within a vineyard is going to help them make more informed decisions, whether that's been to redevelop the land so they don't get impacts of some of these water profiles like waterlogging or lack of water, a management decision around zoning, for example, because of that available water, or if they're going to put new plantings down, understanding what the existing landscape looks like so they can drive that way forward. So this is something that we're working on and have delivered across a number of different farming systems, specifically around vineyards. We think that this is a really important tool to understand where that water moves so that you can get that clarity and confidence around making a decision. So where you might be down one path, this is either there to help reinforce that decision and give you that confidence that you've made that right decision, or prevent you from making a wrong decision and reevaluating where you're at, and then being able to sort of move forward with the most amount of knowledge available. So anything in this you wanted to bring up, Ollie?
So it was, with Tyrrells, so it was primarily being able to understand the way that water flows across their land, which was the primary driver to bring you guys in and to fly over the property and do this mapping.
Absolutely.
And what's like been the practical, now I know you've only just started to deliver this to everybody, but what are they going to do off the back of these insights now?
So say in Melbourne, for example, where this vineyard is, they can't actually build any more dams, but they are able to create contour banks to divert more water to those existing dams to make sure that that water capture piece is as efficient as it can be, so that when there is periods of no rain, for example, they do have that water available to them. Ideas of putting in contours in particular parts of the vineyard so they can distribute water more evenly. Putting drains in place, for example, so they can move water where they're clearly seeing that there are some issues, or doing earthworks in those areas to sort of to build up the base of that landscape so they're not susceptible to that waterlogging. So there's a whole range of different reasons.
And any new, so obviously it's a really big operation. So are they obviously in the midst of ripping up, grubbing vineyards, putting new vineyards in? So
yeah,
those kind of things will get
you mentioned that it is really old. If I click on this block here, it will tell me that it was planted in 1892. So really, really old vineyard. So they've got that mix of existing vines, ways in which treating a block, so creating those zones like you mentioned, and also as you mentioned with they wanted to say develop a new vineyard in this area, for example. You can clearly see that water profile is pretty stable. There isn't a lot of water moving around here. It's at a lower point in the property, and you can clearly see that in the bottom here you can see the heights as well. So from so this point here is 120 meters, moving all the way down to the northeast is 117 meters. So there's a 3 meter drop in elevation there, and you can see where the water does flow in that direction. So that will give them drivers to say which direction they're going to plant their rows, and what varieties, for example, might work best there. Combine that with some soil testing, and you get a really full picture of the potential for those vines to be successful in that location. Another example is up on this part of the farm, or this part of the vineyard, where they had some washouts. So clearly understanding which parts of that vineyard or that block were really affected by washouts and which ones weren't. So on the northern side here, not too bad. On the southern side, really, really bad in terms of the washout And I can show you that in a visual sense as well. You can see some of these lines that drive through here. I can move this slider across and you can see where those washouts are. So potentially contouring up the top here. So you're trying to, fundamentally improve the landscape rather than sort of chasing the vineyard throughout a season as well is a big factor. And I'll kind of move that is a good segue to go to the next point, which is, like I mentioned, this is a great catalyst, the water piece. As the vineyard continues to, develop through a good year or a bad year, we can start to bring in some of these more dynamic layers. So say your satellite imagery, we're able to bring in satellite imagery every 4 days, assuming it's cloud free. And then that's a really good way for these owners and managers to view that data. So I'll turn on an NDVI layer from a matter of about a week ago. And you can see then again how that growth dynamic of early season vine growth is occurring within this part of the vineyard. And then you can potentially, or actually, put the water layer on top of that again to create a fuller stack of information to get a clearer picture where you might see that there is some issues with areas that get good water availability, have got a lead in terms of growth, but that might not be a good thing later in the season when you're trying to create a uniform grape or wine. So there is a lot of opportunities to start to stack this data. We also bring in sensor data. So we do this for other growers. These guys don't have any sensors in the farm at the moment, but we do have the capacity to bring in sensors, view that live data as well. So they've got this tool to view all their data, to view all their different technologies that they have, and build upon that digital foundation, which is that really high resolution 3D model of the entire farming system, and then start to build things out from there. And then also look at it for a number of different purposes. So whether that's marketing, I mean, for example, when you go and buy a car, you don't buy a car and they say you can only drive from your home to the shops, right? We want to offer a car or a vehicle for the grower to use for whether it be marketing, their own vineyard management, compliance, financing, a whole range of different purposes, right? So giving them that vehicle to do whatever it is that they want with it. Embedding videos, for example. So I know wine marketing is a huge part of the industry. So and tourism, also bringing those elements in to really give that feel for what viticulture is really about.
I was going to say, have you been starting to work with wineries that are people starting to embed this onto their websites from a marketing perspective as yet?
Yeah, so that's one of the questions that the Tyrrells guys answered from their marketing perspective is maybe a read-only version of this where you can not necessarily bring the water layer on, but you can fly around, you can click on the vineyard, you can understand where it's from, bringing in things like QR codes as well on bottle labels down the track that can go all the way back to saying, we've clearly shown you that wine, so I think this is a Shiraz, if I'm correct. There's the wrong one. Chardonnay, right? So that Chardonnay bottle came from this part of the vineyard. It was planted in '94. We call it the roadblock. It's of only 0.72 of an acre. All those sorts of things. That really dynamic piece. Once you have this, you can do a range of different things with it, and marketing is definitely one of them. So building this in as a tool for people to visit the website and really understand where the wine comes from.
And with the vineyard, so is it? So it's mainly from your experience so far, it's been often like the vineyard operations team that have first kind of started to work with you, but then you've been able to actually provide value to lots of other different people further along the path.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been the case across the agricultural sector, not just viticulture, right? So we've actually done some examples where we've mapped a farm for a real estate purpose, right? So during COVID, it was almost impossible to go and visit a farm if you're out of state. So that really narrowed the field for potential buyers, whereas digitizing and being able to share this data online, made it a really great tool for the real estate space. Then once the owner buys that data or the owner buys the property, the data travels with them. It's a digital asset of the real asset that should be owned by the owner of that particular property. And this is another example of where that can be used as well. So, there's people from all over Australia and potentially other parts of the world, and we're all now getting a really detailed view of a vineyard in the Hunter Valley. So that capacity to sort of bring people together and sort of shrink time and space to go and take a journey and really understand more about a particular winery or any agricultural asset has been really powerful for us.
No, that's really good. No, thank you, Stu. I think, is there anything else that you want to show, or are you happy? Because obviously there's some questions popping up for you at the end.
Yeah, sure.
If that's okay, we'll move along to Tim. But that's excellent. And again, like really good. So you just finishing off, like you've been able to obviously work with now you've created this digital twin of Vineyards, like you've been able to interface with the Cyro model. You're obviously bringing in NDVI imagery. You're interfacing with third-party sensor manufacturers. So, like again, one of those reasonably rare examples of actually you pulling things together to be in one single place for people to make it useful.
Yeah, and that's what I think is potentially missing, and that's what we're trying to fill that gap. Is everyone talks about digital agriculture, or we need to actually digitize the farm to be able to have those building blocks for other people to integrate with us or otherwise. And we see us as a technology enabler for other people, and that collaboration piece is really important to us because we're not going to do it all, but we have the capacity to facilitate a lot of that, data stacking and that contextualization of information, so that the product is far more valuable when it's seen in context with all the other layers, and particularly with water as the main driver. And just before I go, Ollie, I mentioned to you before, we've got some opportunities in the Clare Valley and the Barossa, where we do have some data where we potentially have some data where we don't have to go and capture ourselves. It does exist, so we can start to exploit that. And anyone that's out there in the Barossa or the Clare that has interest in what we're doing and sees value, we can start to do exactly what I've shown you here with Tyrrells in a really efficient way. If you've got interest, we're more than willing to have a chat and see where we can take it.
Well, no, thanks, Stu. And we have a load of there's been a load of growers, especially from Clare, who've come down into the sessions to identify those important features for them. So, and we've had, I think, Barossa grape growers have been posting to their grower community that these events are coming on. So we'll do a follow up to everybody. But yeah, anybody on the call, I'll make sure we circulate Stu's contact details. But if a fire has happened, that's half the battle already won.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, great. No, thank you, Stu. And we'll come back to questions at the end. And Tim, over to you. And obviously, Tim, I won't give you much of a set because I'll let you just go, Tim. But obviously, somebody else doing really, really innovative work in augmented and virtual reality and 3D imagery. So I'll just pass straight over to you.
Yeah, I love that stuff that Stu does. It kind of gets me really excited, right? So when I met Stu about a year ago, we started collaborating, and over this presentation, you'll actually see the evolution of what Stu and I have done. And hopefully you'll get some good little wins for your own businesses. I'll share my desktop, try and keep myself on track with the PowerPoint, and let's get started. So I'm going to talk about immersive technologies in general, because I think it's nice to be able to give you some background about what immersive tech is and how you can use it. And I'll sprinkle it with a few examples. So before I get started though, have a look at this question, guys. This was on Facebook about 3 years ago, and it was a competition. And you actually had to write in Facebook in 25 words or less what you would do if you won a bus. And so I had a crack. I put in my entry and I said I would convert it into a classroom and travel throughout Australia. And lo and behold, they actually gave me a call and said, Tim, mate, you've won the bus. And so I'm like, wow, okay, so I've got this massive bus. So I drove it back to my dad's farm. I'm from a dairy farm. And we got together one afternoon and started ripping out the seats. And I was underneath holding the nut, and Dad's unscrewing them. And suddenly by the afternoon, we've got this huge space. And I said, hey, Dad, I reckon this is going to work. Anyway, 6 weeks later, we had a classroom. And I hit the road, and it's been on the road for about 3 years now. And Rocky, the Think.Digital coach, turned into a virtual reality mobile classroom. And so we've got 20 headsets on board, right? So the bus drives into schools. The students put on the headsets and they go on these wonderful adventures. And a lot of it's to do with agriculture. Pretty much 90% of stuff that we do is around ag. And they come on the bus and we put all the headsets on them. This one was about the lamb supply chain. And this is a 360 video that we produced for MLA, Meat Livestock Australia. And you may have seen it on Landline, and the bus continues to be our bit of a flagship. And next year it's going to be back on the road. But sadly, COVID meant the bus was in storage this year. So that's one side. So I just wanted to sprinkle you with that story because I'm not really that traditional tech dude. I'm from a farm, love a bit of VR, and I've got myself a bus. We've had over 100,000 people on the bus now, so we've seen a lot of people put on VR headsets. But if there's one thing that I believe, and this is where I come into play today, is that our world will be made up of real things and digital things, okay? So a real thing is a grapevine. A digital thing could be a digital tag on the vineyard. And so we're going to walk around in a world where, you know, you're going to have this digital stuff, and then you're going to have the real stuff. I don't know if you remember this. This is Back to the Future, you know, and he kind of, you know, craps himself when this Jaws comes out. He's just like, where did this come from? And what about Avatar? Remember they were planning their attack with that AR, that digital tree? And so this is reality, guys. This isn't fairy tale stuff. And we saw what Stu was doing on the web, but let's take this off the computer. Let's put on an AR wearable and let's have a look at our digital twin. Let's engage with it like never before. And really, that's my passion. I want to get off the 2D screen. I want to be, you know, in the data, so to speak. So, you know, when I go to field days, this is what I see, right? They're holding up these pieces of paper and they're flapping in the breeze. You know, we've got a lot of 2D mapping, you know, NDVI data and things like that. But my job is to try and take it away from this and try and make it look a bit sexy and obviously useful. So how can you use immersive tech in viticulture? So rather than jump right down to the end and show you some blue sky stuff that I'm working on, let's go back to some really easy things that you can do tomorrow. And I'm pretty sure they'll help you out. So there's 4 things. I'm going to cover each one over about a 2-minute period. So I'm going to move fairly quickly. If you're interested in knowing more about a particular technology, just reach out because there's lots of examples under the hood. But let's start off at the very top, 360 photos, right? Now, I know it's kind of photography, but in a way it's VR. And we've grown up and we've been using Street View for many years, right? We always look up our house and look at where we're going on a holiday. I've been doing sort of Google Street View for many years. So I go and take a photo. Often I'll use a camera. You can use your mobile phone if you needed to know. You can download the Street View app and you can actually create a 360 photo these days. But something like here, these are 3 cameras, right? The one on the left, this little white one, that's $200. So you could take a 360-degree photo of your vineyard for training, marketing, whatever you want to do, asset management. And then you can move up to the middle one. This is about a $700 camera. Quite nice, takes a really crystal photo. Again, it's about a 5.7K sort of image. And then you got the big boy on the right, the Insta Pro. Now, that's the one that I use on all the big jobs. It's about a $5,000, $10,000 camera, depending on which one you get. But once you've got the photo, you put the camera out in the vineyard and then you take a series of photos, right? So you might wander down the vineyard, you might go down certain rows, you might take it from a viewpoint, and suddenly we've got, I don't know, 30 photos from across the vineyard. So what can you do with those photos? Well, the easy thing to do is just to create a virtual tour. Now, I know it's more marketing, but actually it can be really good for training. Let's have a little look at this one that I did for the DPI. I'll just make this a bit bigger for you. So see how I'm dragging my mouse and I'm moving around? So that's a 360 photo. Now, I actually didn't even take these photos. The client did. So he went around and put it up on his camera, on his pole, and took the photos. Now, what you might notice, though, as I'm spinning around, you've got these little icons, right? So you can click on those. And so that'll bring up the information, won't it, of that particular sensor. And we actually did this for the DPI for their demo farms. And we're actually doing this for the PERSA demo farms as well. So we'll be creating down at Loxton and down at all the other properties, a virtual tour. And really, this is a communication tool. This isn't a productivity tool, but think about it. Imagine if you had new staff and you got a big property and you want to send them around the property and they have to go and learn how to start the pump, I don't know, or learn how to, switch off the right light switch. Well, you can do that. You can embed videos and so forth. Now we can click on a map here. Angalong happens to be a vineyard that they had, but we can click down from here. We can go down into the VR and we can move around. And we've actually got some live feeds coming directly into here as well. So you can make it a bit of a productivity tool, or it can be a training tool. You can embed videos in it and so forth. All right, so I know I'm moving fairly quickly. Everyone's kind of seen 360 photos before. If you haven't, give us a buzz, because we're creating a lot of them, and mainly because of COVID. People can't get out to the pig farm in this case. And, I want to go down inside there and have a look at the weaners. So now I'm inside the weaners and I can move around. So I love 360 photos. I've done hundreds and hundreds. And look, it's a bit of an easy one to get started. The next thing is 360 video, right? So 360 video means that instead of pushing take a photo, we're pushing and we're recording video. So when we record video, 360 video, we can't be on the set, right? So you can't set up the camera and go, all right, guys, and action. You have to actually go hide behind a truck or go stand underneath a ute or hide behind a tree, because it films everything. And 360 videos are great for training. They get positioned for education and marketing. And in fact, I did a little bit of desk research, and our region has actually had an investment in 360 video. So let me jump onto YouTube and show you one. This is from the Riverland. We didn't produce this particular video. This was produced by 57 Films, actually, one of Ollie's friends. But I'll push play and you'll get the general drift, all right?
The climate is ideal for growing premium grapes, and our limestone soil.
Now I can move the mouse. Watch this.
Stepping down from the limestone cliffs, you're on the River Murray. On the river, there's plenty to do. Try some water skiing.
Now, when I've got 360 video, up here in the left-hand corner is a bit of an arrow, see? So when I click on this, it'll move it around. Alrighty. So 360 video, a very powerful VR kind of experience. And yeah, we do lots of them. We'll be doing some 360 videos for PERSA, but mainly we're doing a virtual tour for them. All right, moving along. One of the ones that we did for Green Life Australia was we used it for biosecurity training. Okay, so instead of just being a marketing tool, we actually used it as a sort of a training tool. And this gentleman actually had a biosecurity outbreak, and he told his story. And other producers went on a tour of his property and learned what not to do. So it's fantastic for that. And if you have lots of 360 tours, then we also have what's known as a VR player. And some of our clients have over 50 360 videos, and we need to build them out an application. And this is one of our white label applications that we've done for a training organization. You click on dairy, you move down, you've got a selection of dairy videos. You can download those to the headset.
Got a share screen there for us there, Tim. We've lost your screen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll do that again. Thank you. How's that? Is that better? So this one here, you would just choose the video you want to watch and so forth. So if you are interested in having a look at some 360 content, I'd suggest to jump on your phone right now and scan one of those QR codes, because see, Farm VR, there's about 150 360 videos in there. Some of them I kind of want to hide under my desk and pretend I didn't film them. But at the end of the day, we've got to start somewhere. And so scan in that QR code and download Farm VR. And if you ever want to do some 360 videos, I'm more than happy to give you some coaching around that if you want to do it yourself, or if you want us to come out to your vineyard and do something a little bit more classy. If you can't do it on your own, then more than happy. Sort of our bread and butter. All right, so we're going to move away from 360 video now, and we're going to talk about VR. So we're going to move into an area where you're not filming it, you're building it or you're programming it. And so we kind of have hands now, right? So we're not watching video, we're engaging in content. So we're making selections. I don't know, we're cutting the vineyard, we're cutting the vine. We're picking up the wheelbarrow and pushing it. We're driving the tractor, so to speak. One of them we actually do have is a tractor driving experience where you learn the basics of using a tractor. And so they put on their headset and off they go, and fantastic for just general, training in terms of tractor safety. In this one, we had to build it out. They went out and picked up some round bales and brought them back to the shed. But you could imagine the sort of style of VR training you could do. This guy over here is quite funny. Everyone laughs at him, but he's shearing a sheep, right? That was a prototype I built about 2 years ago. But when I showed that to Wally, he went, hang about, we can cut vines, can't we? Can't we learn certain processes on how to do things? And so, yes, that's the answer. Other than that, you can have a bit of fun with some driving. The kids love driving around in VR. So if you were to hire some backpackers on your property, maybe you could do some VR training and inductions.
Tim, because you just asking a quick question on the fly, because you were, I don't know if you're going to come on to this, but about the VR, the use of VR in the mushroom industry to train like staff before they start work about like the optimal way to pick.
Yeah, I mean, there's VR training in lots of things these days, just certain procedures on how to do things. But you're right, Ollie, they used it in the mushroom industry to train up staff on how to know when to actually cut the mushroom. So they did it in VR first, and then they saw an increase in productivity and also food loss in terms of once they were trained. All right, so we know that we can use VR in training, and we might have seen some of this before, but wouldn't it be good to have the trainer and the student in the same room? And that's when we move into a multiplayer world. This is when we need to sort of say, well, they're not going to be in there alone. They're going to be in there with another person. So we created Farm VR World. It's a multiplayer VR experience, and you take a photo of yourself and it skins an avatar, and then you go and meet people in real time. It's kind of like Zoom on steroids because you're in a 360 environment. I'm going to show you a short video. It goes through about 20 seconds or so, but check it out because those people in this experience are all from around the world. They weren't even in the same town, let alone the same country. So you can see there that there's people talking and meeting in real time. So again, great for training, great for being able to use it in a multiplayer world. Even if you're bringing out backpackers or trying to find 26,000 Australians willing to work, we can train them in VR first. All right, I mentioned there was going to be 4 technologies. So we're up to probably my favorite. Is the world ready for it? Well, yeah, kind of. Augmented reality is starting to take a bit of shape. We're starting to see phones become more intelligent. They're able to handle augmented reality. We're starting to see it become less gimmicky. And in fact, we're starting to use it for productivity gains. So this is when sort of, Stu and Think.Digital, Agronomy and Think.Digital came together because this is our specialty. We don't want to create another platform. The likes of Stu, does that very well. What we really want to do is take what they're doing and we want to bring it into AR, and we want it to be able to be used in context. So ideally, we'd love to be able to use it out in the field, not just sitting behind the computer. You know, you think about AR wearables, right? So what they are is they allow you to see digital things. And in this case, it's quite an old shot, but you get the idea. She can see that vase because she's wearing wearables. If we just walked up and saw her and we didn't have wearables on, we would wonder what she's doing. It's probably looking like Tai Chi or something. And so what we do is we sort of take the concept of AR and we build out applications. We've got 2 devices that we work with. Actually, I've got it right behind me. Let me grab them because they're kind of cool. Rightio, I've got 2 pairs of glasses on and a microphone. Anyway, I probably look hilarious, but at the end of the day...
Stop sharing your screen so we can see you.
Oh, you can't see me. So when I talk, you can't see. Interesting. There you go.
There you are.
So rightio. So I don't really need to wear my glasses underneath, so I'll take them off. But these are an Android device, right? And what they do, I mean, this is, at the moment, this is kind of where technology is. This is the device here. This sort of clips onto your belt. And instead of looking through your phone, this is what we're currently doing with AR, the AR comes up in front of you in sort of like a hologram. But look at this. I've got 2 hands. And so I'm right into this idea that as a farmer, we want 2 hands. We don't want to be holding a phone and trying to screw up the windmill, or we won't be dealing with windmills down the track, but the solar panels, right? So wearables are coming. They're here. I mean, this is a $5,000 unit, but Facebook are bringing out wearables next year. They look a little bit like Ray-Bans. So if this is coming, what can we do to prepare? All right. A couple of ideas. Let's have a go. Let's have another screen share. So when I screen share, you can't see me. So I don't even need to be animated. I can just hide behind my PowerPoint. Fair enough. All right. So we create a product, don't we? Farm AR or Farmer. Yes, I was so thrilled to get that name. Anyway, Farmer is an augmented reality experience for farming. Right, it started off just in the classroom to teach kids about where their food comes from. So we started off by putting, I don't know, a cow in the classroom, and all the kids get to see the cow. But then we became a little bit more serious. In particular, relating to this project, because we've done lots of them, I actually said, right, I wonder if we could create an augmented reality experience of a vineyard. And we've done this a little bit with Stu already, but I wanted to follow through for Ollie and all the hard work that they're doing. So I gave Emily a call. I don't know if some of you met Emily at the start, but I gave her a call and said, tell me more, Emily. I want to create a map. So the first thing she said I needed is a high-res image of a vineyard. So I went down to Erbray High School and got permission and put up my drone, and I took out, I think, 450 photos of this vineyard, right? So I had a program do this. I didn't sit there and take the shots. I just programmed my drone to take the 450 shots. And it was fantastic because I was able to get a whole lot of things just from the photography. Everything from, you know, the NDVI data to a high-res GeoTIFF. But what I was able to do was to create this. Now, this is known as a 3D model. And I mean, that took me 20 minutes to produce in terms of the drone in the air, but that's about as much as I can do in my drone. I mean, I think, did Stu say it was 53 hectares or something that he did, right? So, you know, this is like the swimming pool of his property, right? So you need a fixed wing or someone like Stu to do something any bigger than this. But once you've got this, what can you do with it? Well, we can actually then take it from the screen and we can pull it out and we can put it on the table, a bit like a chess piece. So I'm going to show you that. Let's do a live demo. Let's be a bit risky here. So I will get my iPhone and I'll share it to the screen. Okay, here it comes. Coming now. 5044. Okay, so I'm going to boot up the Agronomy app. This is one of our augmented reality apps. And we did this for Stu to, you know, help him sort of show clients about the future of, I guess, digital twins and how they can be viewed. So the first thing the app wants to do is it wants to know where the ground is. And so what we have to do is we have to scan the ground, and then we can click the plus button, and then we can click on, say, this map, and then we can place it on the floor. And then we can make it larger. So right here, you'll see that I can see this property. And Stu, you'll probably back me up, mate. Was this taken during the drought? Because, you know, unfortunately, it's not as green as some of your other properties. But the point is that what Stu wants to do, and what a lot of people are trying to do, is they're trying to create these table talkers, the ability for a team or investors, and what Ollie was mentioning in way of customers, they want to create the ability to see the property. Now let's get a little bit more fancy. What we can do here is we can overlay some data. So you can see here now that instead of looking on the computer screen, I can kind of use my phone and I'm looking at the NDVI data. But one of the strengths of Agronomy is the water simulation. And so this one's the soil. So we can start to see some soil data. And then I kind of like this one. I don't know how well this will come across, but this is this water mapping that Stu was talking about. And we can see here, there seems to be a bit of water sort of gathering at the end of this particular spot. So I don't know, maybe we want to put a dam there or put a channel to move out the water or whatever it happens to be. So the reason I wanted to show you that was because imagine wearing glasses and seeing that. Imagine standing there with your team and you've got your digital twin in front of you, just like in Avatar, you've got the tree, and just like in the army, they had that war zone. You'll be able to do this with agriculture using AR. And so what we're working towards is the ability to have a digital twin and use the likes of Agronomy and other companies that are sort of creating these, and then pull them into AR and then visualize them out in front of us. But if you want to take it one more step, you can. And let me just take you down this path and then I'll finish up. So the next one is, and I'll just share my screen again because we've just got this next demo. When we're dealing with DAF up in Queensland, they're also using data and they want to see it better. And they were the ones that approached us and said, we want to educate customers better. And so as a result, we were able to produce something for DAF. And if you have a look at this, this is kind of where we're taking the visualization. This is available on web to view. This is just a screenshot. But imagine this as an AR wearable sitting on the table and you're talking to the farmer about their sodium levels or chloride. So if you'd like to download Farm AR, all of those things that you saw me do are available on the app. It's free. Just click on, I think it's called Properties from memory. So Agronomy have their own app and there's quite a lot of scans that aren't available to the public. Obviously, Stu has to keep them for the farm only. But the ones that are available and the farmer said, yep, no worries, you can make them public. You'll find them on Farm AR. So download that. Worst case, you can put a cow in your living room. Other than that, you can have a look at some other stuff. All right, to end off, let's combine VR and AR together. And that brings us to XR. And the last thing I wanted to show you today was the convergence of both. XR stands for extended realities, or it's like the umbrella term given to these new realities we seem to be dealing with. And so Farm XR was born this year out of COVID. And we rolled up our sleeves and we created a new product. Now, I'll take you on a journey on how this works. So this is a vineyard. This is a screenshot. And so you can see here that I've got different sensors. And now these sensors are scattered throughout the property. And what Farm XR does is two things. First of all, Ollie, just give me a nod. I'm going to how do you shut that down? Yep, there we go. Just give me a nod, Ollie, if you can see this.
Oh, okay.
You can see that okay?
I can see that coming up. All good.
Perfect.
We've only got about 5 minutes left though, Tim.
No worries at all.
Thanks.
Okay, so here we go. We can click on these different sensors. So on the right-hand side, you'll see the sensors pop up, and then we fetch the live data. So this is currently going in, collecting it from the cloud, and it's giving us the data that we need to know. And so we can go down and we can click on the various sensors. This one looks like a weather sensor. There you go. They've got 9.8 kilometers currently pumping around that area. So Farm XR is designed to show you on a desktop what your farm's doing. More of a communication tool than Stu's sort of, I guess it's more of a management tool that Stu sort of represents. But also when we're on property, there's an application. And when we're standing in latitude and longitude right near this pin, we just hold up our phone, the pin pops up in front of us, and then we can see the data. So this one here shows me walking along a path. You can see the little pins here. And if I was to click that pin, the data would come up and tell me what the soil sensor is telling me underneath the soil. Imagine if we were wearing glasses and we were walking or on our motorbike and we see these pins popping up telling us all what's happening on our property. And that's where the big thing's going to happen. So I thank you for your time today. I hope there's been a fair bit of learning and hopefully some ideas, everything from a $200 camera to AR wearables out on properties. That's my details there if you need it. I'll put it up on the screen and you can grab those down in the bottom right-hand corner. And thank you for your time today, Ollie.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tim. So yeah, I'll also send around to everybody that's attending. We'll make sure that we share both yours and Stu's details. I was just thinking there's been a load of, because I promised everybody we would stick to an hour, and I was, if it's okay with everybody, what we'll do is we will take these questions in chat. So we've got those saved. And Stu and Tim, if you don't mind us flinging these questions at you, would you mind just answering them for us? And then we'll just circulate some feedback back to everybody, if that's okay. So we'll get that over, and then in our next update, we'll send the feedback across, because I want to keep this on to time. And I just wanted to, obviously, like we said at the beginning, this is also like the last of our meetups of the year. So hopefully you can, I'll just start sharing my screen. So I think, Lindsay, if you don't mind, just to let you know, obviously next year, this will be the last for this year. If anybody in the community has like a meetup that they would really like to see next year, please do just pop in chat anything you'd like us to cover. Hopefully quite a few of you, we had about 100 people on the meetup on Friday around scaling up carbon in agriculture. So we'll share the video from that session around. So there's a number of really interesting topics which seem to be circulating in agriculture around kind of carbon and other environmental services that farmers can produce. We might well do another meetup about waste and waste plastics and the different ways that they can be dealt with. But anything else you guys would like to see, please pop it in chat and we'll do our best to try and build it around what you would like. I just wanted to flag up a couple of other things which are just live opportunities. It's great. I think both Agronomy and Tim are a part of those PIRSA demo farms in South Australia. So they're going to be actually actively showcasing their technology there. Lindsay, if you don't mind just sharing a link, it's a rolling opportunity for anybody in the community to put forward an expression of interest to be able to showcase their technology at one of those sites. And they vary from vineyards to hort sites to grazing and livestock and dairy through to broadacre. So please feel free to put an EOI in. And also there's recently been some funding made available by PIRSA linked into the red meat and wool industry. So there's actually grants of up to $10,000 for producers here in South. New ag tech solutions for them on farm. So I think, Lindsay, again, if you don't mind just posting some information about that, anybody working in that kind of red meat and wool space that's doing anything in South Australia, there's obviously, you know, funding available now to help support, you know, your potential customers actually adopting your technology and then sharing their learnings and experiences back with the kind of wider community. So hopefully that funding will really, really help to scale up adoption in those industries. And again, hopefully next year, we will see that spreading out into other forms of agriculture and not just red meat and wool. And we'll also send you an update to everybody about next steps with the Collabriculture project. So as I said at the beginning, we've posted out that initial conceptual model of a vineyard, and the next workshops we want to make more tech focused and actually getting into the kind of the technology details around standards to help us to create much more of a logical data model for vineyards. So we'll put a note out, but it would be great to bring together as many developers and tech leads and tech producers working in this space into the next couple of workshops so that we can get into more of those details. But again, thank you so much for your time. Hope that was enlightening. I just want to say a massive thank you to Stu and for Tim for so generously sharing what they're doing. It's really, really appreciated. And again, it's great to see yet again, like a different perspective on how people are using kind of mapping and spatial technologies in viticulture. So thank you so much for your time, and we will wrap it up there. And we'll post this video out from this session for anybody to please, you know, share more widely. Okay, thank you again. And if I don't speak to you before, have a very happy Christmas.
Yes.